Let's break down the 2024 NBA draft. We're going division by division, and we're going to start with the Southeast Division, which hosts all 5 teams within the top 20 and the number 1 overall pick. Let's grade out the drafts and the signings. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and my new biggest ick is a man getting out of a pool. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Playoffs are stopped for many sports. There's not a lot going on in the summer, but FanDuel's got stuff for you. All customers every day get a boost or a bonus. Daily, yes, every day. Something for everyone, every day, all summer long. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We're available on all platforms. Again, I'll give a few of these little explainers over the next few shows. I am going to be pushing out these draft recap shows. I'll be doing some free agency shows. And then I am heading away. So there'll be some pre-recorded content coming out as I go across to the States for a break. This is the only real holiday I have during the year. And to go to Vegas Summer League to check out a lot of the drafted prospects, and then when I come back, we'll be back into the regular scheduled shows. So just be aware that there will be a period starting next week of shows that are pre-recorded. So if Gigantic News goes down, you will find my reactions to those on things like YouTube Shorts or on TikTok or on Instagram Reels. I just do quick reactions on my phone as best I can because I'm not taking a whole setup over there to the States, and I'm going to be on holiday. So that is what is going to be happening. But for this week, we've got a lot of stuff coming out as we look across the NBA draft. Now, it is very easy. Maybe it's not. But the common thing is for people to give draft grades. And let's just start this out straight away. It's impossible to know, right? We don't know how good a draft is going to be. The only way that we can do draft grades, and this is how I would implore you to look at it, is that we can look at it and say, this is how I thought these players would be. I think the teams went too high or too low, or I don't like the fit, or I don't like the position they grabbed this guy at, and judge it that way. We've got nothing else to judge it on. It is far from a completed story, and the completed stories happen years down the track. I'm also not going to be out here giving Ivy League style inflated grades where everyone's going at an A or a B. No, we're not about that. Not at all. I'm not going to do traditional letter grades because it's a bit played out. You'll see our scale coming up in a sec. In fact, maybe I should give you the scale. No, we'll do the scale later. As we go through the teams. Okay, so let's start off with the Southeast Division. These little shows are going to be sort of smaller than usual, 5 teams per show. And then we'll bang them out that way. So, what should we talk about? Should we talk about the first team in the Southeast Division? The team that had the number 1 overall pick? We should. It was the Atlanta Hawks who had that number 1 overall pick. They've obviously made a trade, and I will talk about the trade impact in the first free agency show. Because I still think that both Atlanta and New Orleans with the DeJounte Murray deal, they're both going to be making more moves. So I could go into a 30-minute breakdown of it. And it doesn't mean anything because the Pelicans need a center, and Ingram might go, and McCollum might go, and who knows what happens with Capella and Okongwu in Atlanta, or does Trae Young or DeAndre Hunter, does someone move to the Spurs or whatever. There's so many different things that are going to happen, so not a big breakdown coming of that deal. But we are talking, like I said, Atlanta Hawks because they did have the number 1 pick in the NBA draft. And with that pick, they took Zachary Ricochet from J.L. Borg over in France. I had Ricochet 13th on my board, so it's safe to say I don't love them picking him at number 1 at all. As you can see if you are watching on the video, they are his per 40-minute pace-adjusted stats in the French league. 19 points with 2.5 threes. I like the 2.5 threes. 19 points is not bad. It's not bad. 6 rebounds, 1.7 assists, 1.6 steals, 0.8 blocks. Those defensive numbers are fine. They're okay. They're not outstanding. They're okay. I don't get it. Like, I don't understand what... I know this... Caveat always, this is not a very good draft. I'm well aware of that. I think we all know that part of it. But there was so many different ways they could have gone in this position that would have made more sense to me. I have a grading system on these picks based on numerous different factors, how I viewed the player, how consensus viewed the player. The leverage of the value of the pick is important as well, and where the player was actually picked. And then I've got a scale that I put in there in terms of how I think the pick fits. So it's about like, do I like the player, and do I think it fits, and how did others view the player? And Ricochet graded out terribly. Like, it just was not a very good grading at all. If I was giving a letter grade for the individual pick, it's an F for me. At this point, that's how bad it is. But that could very much change. Very easy for that to change. The second pick they had in the second round, which every single pick I believe in the second round was traded, which is something not... A lot of people froth trades. I think that the way the draft runs with all those trades is actually ridiculous, and it leads to so much confusion, and it honestly makes watching the draft on TV, and that's partially why I didn't do a live show for the second round, is you can't follow it. It's impossible to follow. I don't know who's getting which player. You have to let the dust settle. It is a bad, bad system, and it's a system where the NBA needs to work out something with roster construction where the value of second round picks is just every single one of them is dealt at every moment. There's something wrong with that, I think, but whatever. They ended up, the Hawks, at pick number 43 with Nikola Jurisic, who I had 26th. So while the Ricochet pick is not one that I would have done, I think they got some really good value with Jurisic there at number 43. Now, it's not going to be enough to offset the overall value of this draft class, but it's pretty solid. At the moment, and this stuff is all going to be subject to change because I don't know who's signing or who isn't signing, but out of the 127 prospects that I ended up doing some sort of level of scouting translation on, I think all but 1, 2, 6... all but 18 of those 127 have found their way onto a team. But there's going to be other guys that end up... One of the guys that I didn't have on my list of top 127 prospects was Mo Wood. He's the only guy I've seen that signed a summer league deal for the Hawks. I have no information on what they've done with two ways or anything like that. So, overall, Ricochet, position of need... Yeah, everyone sort of needs wings, that's fine. I think they could have done a lot better with that pick. I don't love it. I do like the Jurisic pick, but it's not enough for the Hawks to escape without a grade of 1 Isaiah Thomas. They get 1 Isaiah Thomas. And that's not the worst grade. It's obviously pretty bad. For reference, if you want to know what the percentages means, because I've got a scale of rating this out of 0 to 100, an Isaiah Thomas is below 50. It's a below 50 on a 0 to 100 scale. It's above 20, but it's below 50. So they get 1 Isaiah Thomas for their draft. Not fantastic. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook with sports over. A lot of them. Not all of them. A lot of them over. The NBA is one of them. Although there's so much business going on in the NBA at the moment. There's going to be a lot of things that you are looking for. What am I filling my time with? Well, number one, you're filling it with Locked On Fantasy Basketball, but maybe you can be looking at FanDuel because all through the summer, while there are some sports going on, WNBA, Major League Baseball, of course, cracking through, PGA, NASCAR, it's all happening. FanDuel's going to hook up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That is right. There's something for everyone, every day, all summer long. Hey, there's going to be Summer League stuff come out there as well. So go across to FanDuel.com/LockedOn and start making the most of your summer. Actually, I'm so looking forward to the summer over in the States because it was unbelievably cold here. But if you want to enjoy your summer as well, get those daily boosts and bonuses from FanDuel. FanDuel is an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball, and don't forget to gamble responsibly. All right, so that is the Atlanta Hawks done. Do you agree or disagree with my assessment of that class? Don't like the Ricochet pick, love the Jurisic pick. And it gives him the 1 Isaiah Thomas. How would you grade it? 0 to 100. I want your comments on all of these things down below in the actual comments of the show. So next, we go to the Charlotte Hornets, who had a high pick. There were 3 teams in this division with top 6 picks. And like I said, all 5 of them picked within the top 20 of this draft. So we're talking Charlotte Hornets here. And they pulled a pretty massive surprise, I thought, in this draft. I thought the top 4 were, as we expected, 5, I loved, but it was a shock. And 6, I did not think this was going to happen whatsoever. And that was Tijaan Salahin going across to the Hornets. Just a reminder, there's been a lot of mispronunciations of this name. It is not Saloon. It's not Solon. It's Solin. It's a French name. Solan. He eyed him 15th on my board. And if those of you with a keen eye will notice his per 40 pace adjusted stats there for Cholet, they're almost the same as Ricochet's. There is not much difference. Ricochet averaged 18.8 points. Salahin's at 17. But 2.4 threes, 6.8 rebounds, 1.6 assists, 1.9 steals, and 0.3 blocks are very similar. Ricochet had more blocks. Salahin has more steals. He is a big guy. He's very young, but he's big. I would have hoped for more rebounding numbers from him. I don't think he ever projects as a high-level scorer. The shooting, I think, might be okay. I'm not 100% convinced on that, but there is a legitimate chance that this man is a starter for the Hornets this season. I don't know what they're doing with Miles Bridges. There's no PJ Washington. There is still Grant Williams, but he could easily start at the 4 next to Brandon Miller. I think there's a very easy way to see that. I think it'll be very rough initially. I think there is I won't say 50-50 chance, because I obviously had Ricochet 13. I've got Salahin at 15. But there's an easy chance of Salahin being better than Ricochet. Easy. And it's easy to compare them. Both in the French league, both the same age, both the same height. Although Salahin is a little bit bigger, bit wider. More strength, probably more of a 4-5 versus Ricochet at 3-4. I won't say I loved the pick, though, at number 6. Obviously, if you're picking someone at number 6 and I've got them at number 15, that's not particularly awesome. That's not something that I love there. His consensus rank was also around 16 as well, so it wasn't super high in that area. And my ranking scale put him really low as well, at about a 35%. Their other pick was in the second round, that's KJ Simpson, who I had right at number 41. He went at number 42. He's an undersized guard, and for a team that has eschewed getting point guards for years, they got a lot of them now. Vasa Micic, Trey Mann, LaMelo Ball. They just traded for Reggie Jackson. They got KJ Simpson. What they don't have is a 2-guard at all, unless they think Trey Mann can be that guy next to LaMelo. I'm not really sure, but they don't actually have any sort of 2-guard whatsoever. And you can say maybe Brandon Miller's the 2. That's cool, but who's the 3? Now we're into this situation where they've got just guards everywhere. KJ had some really strong stats, good defensive numbers, good passing numbers. Very possible that he can become a strong backup point guard in the NBA. That's solid. Their their undrafted player signings, we had on Exhibit 10, Joel Soriano, who, Exhibit 10, if you're not aware, it's a contract that you sign a player to, and then you've got the ability to, you bring them into training camp, and then you cut them and you get their G League rights if that's the case. You can convert them to 2 ways as well. The Summer League ones are just obviously guys who are being signed to play on the Summer League team. That doesn't mean that they enter the season on the roster. So they've signed Joel Soriano to an Exhibit 10. I didn't have him ranked. They signed Drew Pemba, an older player. I had him 85th on my board, to their Summer League roster, and Raekwon Battle onto their Summer League roster as well. So, how did the Hornets overall grade out? That's the question that I know you're all asking, and your guess is correct. They get 1 Isaiah Thomas as well. I think the Salahin could be okay. I think that is not the greatest value pick at number 6. I get it. There is not a super strong floor, I don't think, with him. At times you watch him and you go, yeah, I see it. And at times you go, what are we doing here? Where are you going? You're in the wrong spot. What's happening? You're all over the shop. And it's going to take a long time to get there. The fit-wise, I don't mind it because there is openings at forward. I would like for them to be able to, at some way, get someone who's a shooter / 2-guard size player. But whatever. And KJ Simpson, really strong value. Like that pick there. It's not immense, wow, you got a huge slider, but it's a really good pick there. The Summer League guys, they don't really count much towards this formula at all. So let's move across to the Miami Heat. Heat culture legends. Again, always remember this. The Heat do not pick the old player. They do not pick the NBA ready player. This idea, again, those two things are not the same thing. Even though people will always ascribe those things together. That's not what it is. Miami picks who they think is the best player, and that is, last season it was Jaime Jaquez. Years before, it's been Nikola Jovic. It's been Bam Adebayo. It's been Tyler Hero. And this, again, there's this perpetuated myth. Like, would you say that Tyler Hero is a Heat culture guy? No. Would anyone say that? No. Would anyone say that Nikola Jovic is a Heat culture guy? It's very easy to see a scrappy older guy like Jaime Jaquez and say, oh, yeah, Heat culture. All right. Narrative runs wild. Now, Kelly Ware, again, people say, oh, it's the antithesis of Heat culture. Heat culture is just taking good players and developing them, especially undrafted guys. And I think they've done that again. As we should just bring up what actually happened with this team. At number 15, they picked Khalil Ware, Superman. I had him at number 12. So I do really like that. He played at Indiana last season after having a freshman year at Oregon, which was quite bad. He averaged almost 20 points per 40 minutes and hit almost a 3. 12 rebounds, 2 assists, 0.7 steals, and 2.3 blocks. Hyper athletic, fast, big jumper. Can shoot. Can play next to Bam. Can protect the rim. He has got, in his past, some issues with effort. Not really a problem at Indiana, more at Oregon. I actually think that there is a somewhat decent shot he's a starter this season. Not certain. It would require Bam changing positions. But their power forward stocks are Caleb Martin, who just declined a player option. Kevin Love's not there. He declined a player option. These guys might all come back. Thomas Bryant declined a player option. The writing's on the wall for him. Hayward Highsmith, free agent. Who knows? And none of those guys go, yeah, no, we're sorted at power forward. The only one they've got there is Nikola Jovic, who played there quite a bit last season, who probably does start. And I think they'd like to see the Jovic-Bam front court, see if that works. But there is a chance for Ware. So I liked him at number 12 quite a bit. He was a guy that very clearly I was in on. I wanted him to go at 12 to the Thunder. Consensus had him at number 20, so they were a little bit surprised that he went to the Heat, but the ranking to me still comes out really nicely at around like a 78% approval. I don't like what they did at pick 44, Pele Larson. I had him at 65, an older wing from Arizona. I know this draft is hard to sort of find that value, and I think a lot of teams went with a bunch of guys in the second round, and this is hard to pass through. A lot of guys in the second round where I go, yeah, these are older, low ceiling upside players, which again, the idea is they're going to be NBA ready, which is just never the case. Not never. It's just not a rule that we can abide by. But as we know, in the second round, usually after the first 10 picks or so, the picks that are made are not because the team thinks that this guy is the best player. A lot of it is negotiating, agent talk with who is going to sign what contract, and there'll be plenty of players that don't sign because their agents have said, we don't want to take this contract, we're going to go here. And that the second round turns into a joke because of this. Because Pele Larson's not going to be the 44th best player, and the Heat probably didn't even have him in this zone. They would have had other guys that they prefer to get in through other means or other players they wanted to take, and the agent said, no, don't take our guy here. There's so many ways that second round players amazingly have this level of power of being able to sort of maneuver where they need to go. Which, again, if you're going to have a draft, that doesn't make sense to have the system that way. You can argue the merits of the draft all you want, but if you're going to have the draft, that system really shouldn't exist that way. So while Pele Larson went at 44 and I had him at 65, there's no reason to suggest that 44 is the right spot. So it is a little bit harder to judge those sort of players because of the maneuvering of teams. They did sign one that I really liked as a two-way player, and that's Keshad Johnson. I think that they're going to work him really well into development as a nice shooting wing guard/player. They're obviously got some real guard depth problems, and it's not solved by Larson or Ware. Johnson, I think there's a chance he can get some rotation minutes at times this season. I had him 61st. They signed him on a two-way. Their Exhibit 10 guy was Bryson Warren, who I did have ranked at 119th, and they signed Isaiah Stevens to a Summer League deal at 93. Now, outside of like the top 80, or top 90 actually for me in my ranking, it was like 90 to 95, around that area, through to 127. I didn't spend a ton of time positioning players, like this guy is definitely better than this guy. They're all sort of lumped together. So when you see Warren at 119 and Stevens at 93, they're relatively close. They also signed a guy by the name of Warren Washington, which just sounds like one of the fakest names I've ever heard. He is signed to a Summer League deal along with Isaiah Stevens. So I love what they did with getting Keshad Johnson. I like the Khalil Ware pick. The Pele Larson one, not my favorite, but overall, we're going to give the grade to the Miami Heat of 1 Jerry West, RIP, the legend. So pretty good haul from Miami in this draft. Brings us in to talking about the final two teams. And we're going to go to the Orlando Magic. Report that Paul George is declining his player option and he's going to be meeting with the Clippers, the 76ers, and the Orlando Magic. And if the Magic get Paul George, they will be a top 4 East seed very easily. I wish he would be meeting with the Thunder. That would be awesome as well. But getting some talent across to the East, huge. We'll see what happens. Because I'll be honest with you, as I always am, I think. I didn't like what happened in the draft for this team. Tristan da Silva was picked at number 18. I had him at 42. Now, it was always relatively likely that da Silva was going to go in this range. And again, the only way that I can judge the way that a draft looks is how I evaluated the players. And da Silva is fine. His consensus rank was around 20, so most other people were bigger on him. But I just don't get excited about it. 19 points per 40, 2 threes, 6 rebounds, almost 3 assists, 1.4 steals, and 0.7 blocks. They are just mid numbers. Like, they're just mid. He's like 23 and a half. Thought he was Sri Lankan at one point. He's not. He's Brazilian/German. He's also like a 4/3, whose best position probably is the 4, and they just don't need that player. There were so many other guys you could have taken at that spot that filled more of what they need. Da Silva can shoot, absolutely. But it then requires guys like Paulo and Franz playing down positions, maybe? I don't get it. There's no clear fit there. To me, he wasn't the best player on the board either. I just don't get it. The shooting, yes, they need it. He's got some size, yes. But that is, to me, just an absolute low upside pick that I don't enjoy for this team at all. When there were many other guys here, I think, that they could have gone with. Now, very easy to have differing opinions on what the Magic did there. You may have loved that Tristan da Silva pick. I did not. Very clearly. And that's okay. But it's just, it's just a situation where I just think they could have done a lot better in that spot. Like the guys that went after him, Jacoby Walter, probably would have preferred him, honestly. Jalen Tyson, Eve Missy, Dayron Holmes, maybe. Their center spot's okay. Wendell's fine, but maybe. AJ Johnson, absolutely not. Keyshawn George, no. Daddy A, Dylan Jones, Terrence Shannon, he might have even worked out for him. Isaiah Collier, would have loved that there. Furphy would have been fantastic. I just don't like the Da Silva pick. Therefore, they get one Isaiah Thomas. Now, because this was a pick later in the first round, so we're not talking top 10, the impact of having a pick that's not super strong is not as high, but I still, that's just so way off the value there. He's not even like a 30% scorer or a 30 out of 100 for me at that pick. I just think that it's just, the fit doesn't make sense. Outside of the shooting, I don't really like the player, but again, things could be very different with how everything looks with this team as we move forward. Finally, the team that had the number 2 overall pick, this division had the number 1 and number 2 overall picks. We're going to the Washington Wizards. And they ended up trading into, they started out the day with 2 picks in the first round, and then they ended up trading in to get pick 14 in the Deni Avdija deal. And then they ended up trading up from 26 using one of their second round picks to get to pick 24. Let's talk about what they did. At number 2, they took my number 1 player, Alex Sarr from Perth. That is to me perfect. The fit is there. I don't know what else they're going to do. We just saw today that Rashawn Holmes is going to be re-signing with them. That means they've got Bagley and Holmes there. So is Sarr going to play the 4? Does that mean Kuzma's gone? Is Sarr going to start and then Bagley and Holmes are just depth? There's Vukcevic there as well. So that's literally 4 centers under contract. So I'm not really sure what they're doing. Unless, again, Sarr is going to play the 4 and then where's Kuzma? That's where things get a little interesting in that build, doesn't it? Will they play Kuzma at the 3? God, that doesn't sound fun. That's possible. Sarr averaged 22 points with over a 3 per 40 minutes, almost 10 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, and 3.4 blocks. He only played 18 minutes a night for Perth, but he's young, he's big, he's 7 foot, good wingspan. I think he's got some offensive scalability, but that's not going to be his thing. He's not a fantastic All-NBA level prospect, but to me, he was the best one in this class. He might make 1 or 2 All-Star games. He might not. But I think he's a really strong prospect who could be easily a second best player on a final 8 sort of a team. A playoff team, a non-play-in team, that sort of team. I think that's what he can turn into. Fantasy-wise, he's probably going to be the only rookie I look to draft inside the top 100. And he's a very clear dynasty number 1. Very clear to me. At number 14, which is the pick they got from Portland, I love this. They picked Carlton Bub Carrington from Pittsburgh. In the end, my final process, I had Carrington at number 5 on this draft board, on my draft board. The class is rough. I probably would have had him about 12 or 13 or maybe even 15 in a sort of a better draft, but it wasn't a better one, so I had him at number 5. Carrington played for Pittsburgh, very young, still not 19, 17 points, 2.5 threes, 6.5 rebounds. That's Zachary Ricochet numbers. 5.1 assists, but he's a point guard. 0.7 steals and 0.3 blocks is what hurts his overall fantasy translation, Carrington. Really low defensive numbers, and some of his shooting numbers weren't strong, but I do think he's going to be a shooter. I think he's going to be a strong mid-range guy and a three-point shooter. His free throws are fine, but that didn't always happen at Pittsburgh. So I think he's going to put up really strong numbers. Getting him at 14 is huge. Now, there is a chance that he is a starter opening night. I don't think they will do that. Jordan Poole is still there. We don't know what they're going to do with like Tyus Jones. They've got Malcolm Brogdon, who I'd imagined, unless they trade him off, it's Brogdon and Poole that start. And then there's still a lot of questions with that team. But Carrington could be a starter. Now, he will be quite bad initially, I'd guess, with some really bad field goal percentage, not great assists and pretty high turnovers, and obviously low defensive stats. And I think that's going to work through pretty nicely. But if I've got him as number 5 on my board, you take him at 14, I can't criticize that. The consensus rank had him at 17, so that's about that spot. Like, I graded this well over 90% for that pick. The SAR one, it went over 90% as well. I love that. Now, the next one, I don't like at all. Now, you could criticize the way that the Wizards got this pick by trading away Avdia, who I was just not as high on as other people. Agreed, Avdia's contract, fantastic. Really good value for a solid rotation player, low-end starter. But he is not, I don't think, a budding star. I think we'll see some of his limitations on a sort of different sort of squad in Portland this year, but whatever. But you got 2 firsts back, and there is a pretty distinct chance, I believe, that Bub ends up a better player than Denny just by himself. And you got an extra pick out of it too. So and obviously Bub's cheaper for now. So I think that was pretty good. Whatever. Denny's solid player. They drafted him. He developed nicely. Still only 23, but I just had him as a lower level than others do. So you can criticize the process of that, getting that pick as much as you want. That's okay. Because I'll criticize a little bit of this process of getting Keyshawn and George at 24. They, not to pick 51 or whatever it was, I think it was 51, they traded up from 26 with the Knicks to get him. Not that I think that that's a super valuable pick, but I don't think you needed to make that move to get Keyshawn George. I don't think he was good enough to be picked there, let alone giving up something else to make the move to get him. George, I had at 37 on my board. He went 24 to the Wizards here. He averaged 13 points per 40 minutes, pace adjusted. That is like incredibly low. Now, he is big. He's like 6'8", shooting guard. The size gets the shot off, no problem. But what else? What else are we doing, my guy? 2.9 threes is good. 5 rebounds, 3.7 assists. That's sneaky. 1.5 steals, 0.6 blocks. But a very low usage player, which I don't like. A guy that can shoot, yes. But what's the point? I don't think he's really going to play much at all as a rookie. There's still Kispert there. There is still Kuzma there. He could fit in. Oh, there's Bilal, obviously, as well. I kept forgetting Bilal. So what would they do? Brogdon, Poole, Bilal, Kuzma, Sarr at center, then still have Vukcevic, Bagley, Holmes. I don't know. The roster's weird. We'll see what else happens. George, I don't think will play a huge amount until we get into April silly season type stuff. And I think he's going to be someone who struggles with his shot early on. Maybe that develops, but I do think the other parts of his game are relatively limited. I, as you'll probably be well aware, did not view this pick particularly favorably. The consensus rankings had him about 26, so other people did. The value of that pick at 24 is not massively high anyway, but overall, getting both of those early picks, Sarr and Carrington, makes this team have 2 Jerry Wests. That's a really good score. That's above 80 overall. 2 Jerry Wests. for the Washington Wizards. And that's my Southeast Division NBA draft recap. Let me know what you thought of the picks that these teams made. By the way, the Wizards have not signed anyone to Summer League yet. And I didn't even mention it for the Magic because they signed like a Talon Cooper, who I didn't even have ranked either. So there we go. That is my recap of the Southeast Division. You know what to do now. You go ahead, you give a thumb, you leave a comment down below. All of that stuff is great. We've got so much stuff coming over the rest of this week as free agency is getting ready to kick off. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.